Trusty and well-beloved, I greet you. My name is Frederic Fahey, and I'm the author of The Scoundrel's Son, my debut work of Tudor fiction, which I published in October 2024. Here is how my story begins. In the ancient city of London, on a certain autumn day in the second quarter of the 16th century, a boy was born to a poor family of the name of Canty, who did not want him. On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor, who did want him, the Prince and the Pauper. Mark Twain. Chapter 1. I had the adventures of a lifetime by the time I was 10 years old, but the events around my 16th birthday were even more astounding and more than a young man should have to bear. Now that more than 20 years have passed and I have found you, my lady, the time is right to share this tale. Whether you believe me or not, I still have the desire, no, the need, to tell it to you as best I can. Tom Canty is my name, and maybe you remember me. When I was 9 years old, I found myself embroiled in one of the great masquerades of English history, along with my good friend Edward. By some stroke of fortune, Edward and I were born on the exact same day and looked remarkably alike, and so I came to often refer to him as my twin. But our birthdays and our physical appearance were where our similarities ended. I was born in Offalcourt, a vile and disreputable part of London not far from Pudding Lane. The children there, including my sisters and me, were very poor and exceedingly hungry at practically all times. On the other hand, the birth of my twin, Edward, was the most celebrated event of the time since he was born to King Henry and Queen Jane. Yes, Edward was born, the Prince of Wales. On the day of his birth, bells throughout the kingdom rang with joy, and throngs took to the streets to sing and dance and revel in the most wonderful news. One day when I was 9 years old and wandering about London, I found myself at Whitehall Palace in Westminster, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal family, and there was Prince Edward in the courtyard right before my eyes. There was so much excitement to see the young prince that the crowd pushed me too close to the gate, and one of the royal guards proceeded to scold me and handle me a bit roughly. The prince took notice of this and objected to my harsh treatment. Before I knew it, I was within the palace walls in the presence of the prince. As we talked, I was surprised to find that Edward's fascination with me and my simple life was at least as great as mine with his bestowed life. It also occurred to us that we looked amazingly alike. A wild idea hatched. Edward proposed that we switch places temporarily so that each could experience the other's life. Certainly, it would be wonderful to be prince for even a short time. However, I could not understand why Edward would want to spend even a minute in my sorry place. Still, like many schemes construed by 9-year-old boys, at that instant it seemed like a marvelous idea. We exchanged clothes, and Edward made his way out into the world while I remained at the palace pretending to be the prince. We spent about a fortnight living each other's life. However, during that short time, King Henry died, and for a brief while I became king. As he would later relate it to me, Edward's adventures were quite harrowing. Luckily, he was befriended by a gallant soldier by the name of Miles Hendon, who rescued him on more than one occasion. On the very day of the coronation, good fortune prevailed. My twin and Miles found themselves back in the royal court, and Edward was crowned instead of me. He named me a ward of the king and assigned my care to Father Andrew, a kindly priest I had known all my life. Being the king's ward afforded me both protection and opportunities beyond those typically available to the sons of awful court. This is a truly marvelous tale, and I hope that some good storyteller, one perhaps better than me, will one day happen upon this adventure and relate it in a way that does it justice. But as extraordinary as this story is, it is not the one I intend to share with you today. And so, my lady, I will tell you my tale from the beginning. I have waited a long time for this chance. The painful events of that time are as vivid in my mind's eye as if they occurred yesterday. I share with you long kept secrets of the wonder and fragile nature of young life and love. The words may stick in my throat or tear at my heart as I try to release them after all this time. Please be patient as I strive for the best way to relate it all to you. My work relates to the last days and tragic ends of King Edward VI and Lady Jane Grey, as told by their good friend and confidant, Tom Canty, the Pauper in Twain's classic. Kirkus Review magazine said this of my work. The novel stands out for its outstanding character development and emotional depth. Overall, Fahey's novel is not only a loving tribute to Twain, but also a creative, independent narrative in its own right. In my presentation at TudorCon, entitled How to Write Your Debut Work of Tudor Fiction, I will share with you how I came to write it all and how I came to write this particular tale, how I went about finding a publisher, work with artists to develop an amazing cover, and finally what I did to try to get my novel before as many eyes of readers who I hoped would enjoy it. For my presentation, I will be in conversation with my good friend from Wilmington, North Carolina, and frequent TudorCon attendee, Katie Holman. How I came to write this story. It was the spring of 2021, and I had been retired for a year, and it was a year after the start of COVID. I was looking for a creative endeavor and decided I would sit down with the goal of writing 1,000 words a day. After 100 days, I had 100,000 words in a first draft. 5 revisions later, I had what I considered a final draft. Why The Prince and the Pauper? When I was a child, there were afternoon movies when I came home from school. So this one day, what I was on was the 1937 version of The Prince and the Pauper that starred Errol Flynn. I sat in my father's easy chair and I was enthralled by the tale of Tom and Edward. After the story was over, I ran to our 20-volume Collier's Encyclopedia to see if Edward VI was really a king. And as this audience knows, he indeed was. And then I asked myself, what happened next? Did Tom and Edward remain friends? Did Tom still impersonate Edward under certain conditions? And did Lady Jane Grey come to visit? Now I know what happened next. How did I go about pitching this tale? Well, I can tell you that rejection is scary. I realized that not everybody was going to be in love with my work, but I still was not prepared for the high number of rejections from both agents and publishers. I say agents or publishers declined to work with me rather than they rejected me, as is often the case of how people say it. Pitching agents first, I decided, would be a way of maybe reaching bigger publishing houses that will not accept submissions directly from authors. But eventually I took a two-pronged approach. I continued to query or pitch agents, as they say, but I also started to submit my work to small independent publishers who did not require it be submitted by an agent. And finally, I found Goose River Press, a small press in Maine, who was willing to work with me. I will stop here and leave the rest of what I have to say for my time at TudorCon in October. I hope this gives you a flavor of both my work, The Scoundrel Son, and the sharing of my experience as a debut author of Tudor fiction. I will end this taste with a QR code of my website for those who want a little bit more information about my work. And now I will take my leave and fare you well.